Okay, so I'll cover what it is, Distro REST API for Filecoin, what it is, what the roadmap is for now, and for those who are interested, how to get involved, how to get started. So what is it? Distro REST API is an initiative at PL to build an open source software that provides simple standard API for storing and retrieving data into Filecoin. So for now, it's just a simple set of API requests, post, get, status, to store and retrieve data and to track status of whatever data has been stored. It's intended to be integrated within an already existing solution. So it's not a user-facing tool, but rather a way for, let's say, managed service providers to integrate into Filecoin as another cloud storage destination for their clients, for example. It's meant to run on premises, whether IDC or cloud. So it's not a hosted solution. You need to run it yourself if you're interested in using it. It's deployable via Docker, and it is designed to onboard large amounts of data. So we're talking more than 1 TB a day or more. So who is it built for? So the main user persona we've been targeting is these managed service providers. An example of that would be like a Wasabi, for example. And it's an opportunity for them to add Filecoin as a storage tier without worrying about anything Filecoin specific. So for those who had experience putting data in Filecoin, know how long of a process it is. You need to prepare the data, chunk it, make deals. All of that is meant to be abstracted with this API from the user. And also independent software vendors, so solution providers for sciences. We've spoken to some geospatial analytics companies, maybe Web3, any specialized ISVs. It could also be used technically by large enterprises and institutions. However, those probably would be the ones with large IT departments who are savvy enough, or there's enough resources to actually integrate the solution into their existing tech stack. And of course, this is too bad our storage provider friends left, but it is a solution that's meant to generate demand for storage providers and sort of separate a little bit the demand generation or business development from the action of actually storing data. So in the future, it could generate good, stable demand flow for storage providers from these MSPs and ISVs who use Motion. So why use it? It's free, open source software. It's meant to be simple. So the reason we designed it is to create a simple way to onboard data to Filecoin and retrieve. And it's also flexible. So we're building with modularity in mind. You have the ability to control where the data is stored, create any custom configurations. It's also meant to be modular, so in the future you can, swap out the deal-making module, for example, for the one that works better for your configuration. So there is a ton of flexibility in it that's built for future. It's not the first tool that's out there built to put and retrieve data in Filecoin. However, it's an open source one, which kind of like sets it apart from some of the prop tooling that has been built in the ecosystem. And then how it's different from, let's say, Singularity, another PL grown tool, is that it could be like S3 compatible, and it incorporates all of the steps into one piece of software. So you don't need to figure out how to retrieve your data. You don't need to integrate it with other solutions to make it a full flow. Unlike Singularity, for example, that doesn't have the retrieval piece. This is kind of a system map of how it works. So Motion, or the code name for the API, is deployed, as I mentioned, on the ISV infrastructure, but it's a package that has a lot of pieces to it that takes care of the entire data flow cycle. So we're, for now, using pieces of Singularity for data prep, for deal making, and for tracking data. Lassie is used for retrieval. So there are some requirements that I'll cover later in terms of there needs to be some staging area to prepare deals to be stored and some staging area to process some of the retrieved files. And motion connects with storage providers similarly to how it would if you used any separate pieces of this solution, let's say Singularity. For now, you need to define the set of storage providers you want the data to go to. In the future, for example, if once we do integration with Spade, it could be an automated flow in terms of you just set the geography requirements, some of the certification requirements for your data, and an appropriate set of storage providers is selected automatically. That's a detailed data flow, lots of detail here. What I wanted to call out is, for now, as you can see, both storage and retrieval needs to go through the ISV, so through the service provider, including retrieval. So, when the end user requesting a file, first it's retrieved from storage provider to the service provider that provides kind of the end user solution, and only then it goes to the end user. Again, this is current architecture. Something to keep in mind if you're, latency, for example, is something you care about. Some of the emerging early requirements so far, ISVs, so those who actually use motion to store and retrieve data. There are some minimum storage requirements, minimum resources requirements, some other requirements, like fairly standard, I would say. For storage providers, they need to be running a boost HTTP, so running boost with HTTP retrievals enabled to take deals from motion. So I've been getting questions in terms of performance requirements, so sort of like what performance the storage providers need to support in terms of, being able to take deals from motion. And that really depends on the end user, on the specific ISV. We've seen requirements, among the ecosystem players we've spoken to, ranging from sub-second latency to, a few days is okay. And of course, that depends on the use case for the data. Similarly, for the frequency, it's either only retrieved once or it's frequent retrieval. And similarly, access control. Some clients really care about being able to restrict retrievals to a specific set of wallets or IP addresses. Some are not bothered too much since data is encrypted anyways. So I would say that each relationship would be very unique, and just because the data is onboarded through motion doesn't mean that it has very standard set of requirements. Our progress to date is we are in the alpha phase. I hope, it's out. But the testable API is ready. So if you're interested, you can actually deploy Motion API and start testing, integrating it into your code base. Just follow this QR code. And S3 compliant API is ready as well. So you can certainly start getting your hands dirty and trying to integrate it and see how it works. We would actually appreciate your feedback if you get back to us with that. And what's coming up, so there is an API interface that's ready already. What's coming up is a beta release targeted mid-November. So at that point, the tool will be forward compatible, and it would fully support storing, retrieving, and tracking data with some minor restrictions in terms of upload size.
Marina?
There is documentation already on the website, so please,
I have a few questions.
In terms of what's in the future, so for now, it's pretty bare bones standard API that just has storage retrieval tracking, reference S3 API integration. What's still missing and what's on the roadmap is data deletion, some of the access control configurations, Metadata management, so for example, like folder structures, automated replication or automated SP selection, flexible storage duration. So, the way these contracts work in real world is of course, client would usually have an initial contract with the service either for 1 month or even like a couple of days storage, and then they extend it. The goal is to support such flexible duration with Motion as well. So you can join our beta now. Not that you need to go through this QR code. It's an open source software, but if you need some support from our team, for example, in like finding storage providers that can fulfill your needs, you can certainly fill in this form. That's all I was hoping to cover today. Are there any questions